Infertile millionaire had no idea he had children, until two poor little boys rang his doorbell asking for help. The December wind howled through Manhattan's steel canyons as Ethan Blackwood stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, watching the violent storm unleash its fury on the city. At 45, he had everything money could buy, except connection. The diagnosis from his childhood still echoed in his mind. Infertile. A cruel sentence that had shaped his life choices, his failed marriage, and ultimately, his isolation. Lightning illuminated the skyline as rain pounded against glass. Ethan sipped his single malt scotch, savoring the burn while reviewing acquisition projections on his tablet. Another late night alone, just how he preferred it. His minimalist penthouse, situated 60 floors above the chaos of New York, served as both sanctuary and prison. The doorbell's unexpected chime pierced the silence, startling him. No one visited unannounced. Ever. His security system showed two small figures huddled at his door, drenched from the downpour. Children? At this hour? Curiosity overrode caution as Ethan approached the door. Security breach on level 60, he muttered, opening the door to find two identical boys staring up at him. About 8 years old, soaked to the bone, their clothes, worn but clean. But it was their eyes that froze Ethan in place, startlingly blue, the exact unusual shade as his own. "Are you Mr. Blackwood?" one boy asked, his voice steady despite his shivering frame. "Yes," Ethan replied cautiously. "Who are you? How did you get past building security?" The second boy stepped forward. "I'm Tyler, and this is Ryan," he said, gesturing to his twin. "We told the doorman it was an emergency." A flash of lightning illuminated their faces, identical down to the arrangement of freckles across their noses. "Our mom needs help," Ryan continued, his small hands clutching a plastic bag. "She's really sick." "Your mother sent you here? In this storm?" Ethan's brow furrowed. "Who is she?" Tyler shook his head. "She doesn't know we came. But we found this." Ryan carefully removed a photograph from the plastic bag, protected from the rain. With trembling fingers, he handed it to Ethan. The moment Ethan saw the image, his world tilted on its axis. A much younger version of himself, barely recognizable at 23, stood smiling awkwardly outside a fertility clinic where he'd donated sperm as a broke medical student, before discovering his own diagnosis had been incorrect. But after, he'd donated multiple samples. "Mom kept this," Tyler said quietly. "She told us our father was a medical student who helped people have babies when they couldn't. She said he had our eyes." Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. It couldn't be possible. Yet the mathematical evidence stood before him. Twin boys, born approximately 9 months after his donation, with his distinctive eye color and facial structure. "She's dying," Ryan whispered, his small voice breaking. "And we didn't know what else to do." The implications crashed over Ethan like a tidal wave. These children, these boys with his eyes, were claiming to be his biological sons. Sons he never knew existed from a donation he'd made when he believed he could never have children of his own. "Please," Tyler pleaded, his composure finally cracking. "She needs a doctor. A good one." As another crash of thunder shook the building, Ethan made a decision that would forever alter the carefully controlled life he'd built. "Where is your mother?" The twins exchanged a glance of desperate hope, and in that moment something primal and unexpected stirred within Ethan Blackwood's chest, an instinct to protect these children who, against all odds, might be carrying his DNA. The journey to Jessica Parker's apartment felt surreal to Ethan. His driver navigated through the storm-lashed streets, while the twins sat silently in the back of his luxury SUV, leaving damp imprints on the leather seats. He observed them through the rearview mirror, their matching profiles, the way they communicated without words, how they simultaneously gazed out at the passing city lights with a mixture of worry and wonder. How long has your mother been sick? Ethan asked, breaking the tense silence. Almost 2 years, Ryan answered. But it got really bad this month. Tyler nodded. The medicine cost too much. Mom couldn't work anymore at the library. As they traveled deeper into a neighborhood Ethan hadn't visited in decades, the gleaming skyscrapers gave way to weathered brick buildings. The contrast between his world and where these boys had been living grew starkly apparent. Apartment 3B, Tyler directed as they pulled up to a dilapidated 5-story walk-up. Ethan instructed his driver to wait, then followed the boys through a narrow entrance and up creaking stairs. The building smelled of old cooking oil and dampness. Yet when they reached the 3rd floor, he noticed something different. The hallway outside apartment 3B was immaculately clean. Ryan knocked in a specific pattern before using a key. Mom? We brought help. The apartment was small, tiny by Manhattan standards, but meticulously organized. Books lined every available wall space, and despite the obvious poverty, there was an atmosphere of care and intention. A makeshift bedroom had been created in what should have been the living room, and there, on a narrow bed surrounded by medicine bottles, lay a woman whose beauty remained evident despite her illness. Jessica Parker's eyes widened when she saw Ethan standing awkwardly behind her sons. She struggled to sit up, her thin frame swimming in a faded sweater. Ryan, Tyler, what have you done? Her voice was barely above a whisper, but carried undeniable strength. They found me, Ethan said simply, stepping forward. And it appears we have matters to discuss. Jessica looked at her sons with a mixture of dismay and pride before turning back to Ethan. I never meant for you to know. I never planned to find you. Yet here we are, Ethan replied, his analytical mind already cataloging her symptoms: the jaundiced skin, the weight loss, the specific arrangement of medications. Advanced cancer, poorly treated. Boys, go to your room, please, Jessica requested. When they hesitated, she added, just for a few minutes. Once the twins had reluctantly retreated to the small bedroom they shared, Jessica spoke directly. I used your donation from the Manhattan Fertility Center in 2002. I never knew your name until recently, when I started researching options for the boys. Her eyes, though tired, met his with dignity. I wasn't looking for money or obligation. I was just trying to understand who they might have in this world after I'm gone. Ethan stood rigidly, his mind racing through implications, possibilities, and the astronomical odds of this situation. You're in advanced stage liver cancer, he stated rather than asked. Jessica nodded. With metastasis to the lungs. You need proper medical care immediately. What I need is to ensure my sons will be safe when I'm gone, she countered. I've been trying to arrange foster placement that would keep them together, but I'm calling my medical team, Ethan interrupted, already pulling out his phone. We're transferring you to Mount Sinai immediately. Jessica started to protest, but a coughing fit overtook her. When it subsided, she looked at him with a mixture of resignation and relief. The boys will come with us for now, Ethan said decisively, though his internal voice screamed at the recklessness of this commitment. What did he know about caring for children? Yet something primitive and unexpected had awakened in him, a fierce protectiveness toward these boys who shared his rare eye color and, potentially, much more. Within 30 minutes, Ethan's influence had arranged an ambulance and direct admission to one of New York's premier hospitals. As medical personnel carefully transferred Jessica to a stretcher, the twins watched with the stoic expressions of children who had grown accustomed to crisis. You'll come too? Ryan asked Ethan, his small hand unconsciously reaching toward the man he'd just met. Ethan hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Yes, I'll be there. As they descended the stairs, Jessica weakly grasped Ethan's sleeve. They're good boys, she whispered. The best of me. And perhaps the best of you too. Though you never knew. Ethan felt torn between the urge to flee this unexpected responsibility and an inexplicable pull toward these children. His carefully structured life was unraveling by the minute, yet he couldn't bring himself to walk away. Not when those familiar, blue eyes looked to him with such desperate hope. The ambulance doors closed on Jessica while the twins stood shivering on the sidewalk, suddenly looking much younger than their 8 years. Ethan placed a hesitant hand on each of their shoulders. "You'll come to my home tonight," he said, the words surprising even himself. "While the doctors help your mother." As his driver opened the car door, Ethan glanced back at the crumbling apartment building, then at the 2 small boys now in his care. In the space of 2 hours, everything he thought he knew about his life, his future, and his past had been irrevocably altered. Ethan's penthouse had never felt so chaotic. For a man whose life operated with precision timing and minimalist order, the presence of 2 energetic 8-year-olds was like introducing hurricanes to a laboratory. "Mr. Blackwood, do you really have a robot vacuum?" Ryan asked, chasing after the sleek device that had emerged from its charging station, startled by unfamiliar movement patterns. "It's autonomous," Ethan replied absently, speaking into his phone, while simultaneously trying to process the hospital's update on Jessica's condition. "And please don't touch the—" A crash from the kitchen interrupted him. Tyler had been exploring the refrigerator and knocked over Ethan's carefully arranged collection of protein shakes. Mrs. Chen, Ethan's housekeeper of 10 years, stood frozen, in disbelief, watching twin boys transform her immaculate domain into disarray within minutes of arrival. "Sir, perhaps the children would like some actual food," she suggested, eyeing the spilled protein drinks with dismay. "Children typically require more substantial nutrition than performance supplements." Ethan blinked, realizing he had no idea what 8-year-olds ate. "Yes, arrange that and prepare the east guest room." "Both in one room, sir?" Mrs. Chen asked quietly. "They're twins. They share already," Ethan replied, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Later that evening, after a hastily arranged dinner of chicken nuggets and macaroni, delivered from a restaurant since Ethan's kitchen contained nothing remotely child-friendly, Ethan showed the boys to their temporary quarters. "You'll stay here while your mother receives treatment," he explained stiffly, demonstrating the electronic controls for the blinds and temperature. "Mrs. Chen will be available if you need anything." The boys stood silently, taking in the vast, sterile guest room with its king-sized bed and minimalist decor. Their small backpacks, hurriedly packed before leaving their apartment, looked pitifully inadequate against the luxurious backdrop. "Can we visit Mom tomorrow?" Tyler asked, his voice small but determined. "Yes," Ethan nodded, relieved to have a concrete answer to at least one question. "I've arranged visiting hours." Ryan approached the floor-to-ceiling windows, pressing his face against the glass to view the glittering city 60 floors below. "We can see everything from here." "Don't touch the glass," Ethan said automatically, then softened at Ryan's immediate recoil. It's just difficult to clean the fingerprints." An awkward silence fell. These children, possibly his biological sons, were now temporarily in his care, yet Ethan had no idea how to connect with them. His entire adult life had been structured around the belief he would never have children, a fact that had contributed to the dissolution of his marriage years ago. "We won't break anything," Tyler promised solemnly. "And we can sleep on the floor, if you want. We don't need the big bed." Something in Ethan's chest tightened at those words. "The bed is for you," he said more gently. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure things out tomorrow." As he turned to leave, he noticed neither boy unpacked their backpacks, leaving them neatly zipped beside the door, ready for a quick departure. The implication was clear. They didn't expect to stay. In the hallway, Ethan leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the sudden responsibility thrust upon him. His phone buzzed with hospital updates, board members' concerns, and his assistant's increasingly urgent questions about his schedule disruptions. Meanwhile, through the slightly ajar door, he could hear the twins whispering, Do you think Mom will be okay in that hospital? Mr. Blackwood seems to know important people. Maybe they can make her better. Do you think he's really our dad? He has our eyes. Mom always said our eyes came from our father. Ethan walked quietly back to his office, the weight of those innocent speculations heavy on his shoulders. His structured world was crumbling, yet beneath the anxiety stirred something unexpected. Curiosity about these boys who might be a part of him he never knew existed. I said breakfast is at 7, Ethan stated, finding the twins already raiding his kitchen at 5:15 a.m. Tyler stood on a chair reaching for cereal boxes while Ryan attempted to operate the complex coffee machine. We always make breakfast, Ryan explained, pressing buttons randomly. Mom needed to rest in the mornings. Ethan quickly moved to rescue his $5,000 espresso system. This isn't... He stopped himself, noticing their defensive postures. These weren't employees missing a deadline or board members challenging his authority. These were children who had been caring for their sick mother. Your mother is receiving excellent care, Ethan said, softening his tone. The doctors are optimistic about stabilizing her condition. This wasn't entirely true. Jessica's prognosis remained grave. But the boys' faces brightened with hope. Now, regarding breakfast, Ethan continued, awkwardly shifting to a more practical topic. What do you normally eat? Cereal mostly, Tyler answered. Sometimes toast with peanut butter. Occasionally eggs when Mom felt good enough to cook, Ryan added. Ethan nodded, making mental notes. His usual breakfast consisted of a protein shake, consumed while reviewing market openings. Children clearly required different protocols. Mrs. Chen will arrive at 6. She'll prepare proper breakfast, he decided. Until then, perhaps you could. Watch television? The suggestion felt foreign in his mouth. Television before work hours seemed wildly indulgent. We don't want to disturb anything, Tyler said, carefully climbing down from the chair. We can wait. Their caution struck Ethan again. These children, who should be carefree and demanding, instead moved through his space with the wariness of unwelcome guests. After Mrs. Chen arrived and prepared a breakfast that Ethan barely recognized, pancakes, shaped like animals, a concept he found puzzling but the boys found delightful. They visited Jessica at the hospital. The contrast between his penthouse and the sterile hospital room felt less jarring than the contrast between his awkward formality and the easy affection Jessica showed her sons. The doctors say you've arranged for specialists, Jessica said, quietly when the boys were distracted by a nurse showing them the hospital's interactive patient system. Yes. Dr. Mirandez is excellent in these cases, Ethan replied, maintaining professional distance despite the intimate circumstances. Jessica studied him. They look like you. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. The genetic testing will confirm. I don't need testing to know, Jessica interrupted gently. But I understand you require certainty. When he returned to the penthouse with the twins that evening, Ethan attempted to establish a schedule. Bedtime is 8:30, breakfast at 7. My assistant Marion will arrange appropriate educational materials until we determine a more permanent schooling solution. The twins exchanged glances, that silent communication that fascinated and unnerved him. We usually go to bed at 9, Ryan ventured. And we do our lessons from the homeschool program Mom set up, Tyler added. Ethan frowned. You're not currently enrolled in school? Mom homeschooled us this year because of her treatments, Ryan explained. We're ahead in math and science, but behind in history. Later that night, reviewing Jessica's deteriorating test results, Ethan faced the uncomfortable reality that this temporary arrangement might become permanent. When he suggested the possibility of boarding school during a conference call with his lawyers, the words felt hollow. That night, checking on the twins before retiring, he found them asleep, but noticed their backpacks remained packed by the door, a silent reminder that in their minds this arrangement remained temporary. As Ethan quietly closed their door, He realized his corporate strategies for managing people were utterly ineffective with children who had already endured more emotional upheaval than most adults. The challenge facing him wasn't a business problem to solve, but a human connection to build, something that had never been in his 5-year strategic plan. The thunderstorm struck Manhattan with biblical fury.
Rain lashed against the penthouse windows while lightning transformed the cityscape into stark flashes of silver and shadow. Ethan sat in his home office, reviewing Jessica's latest medical reports. The prognosis wasn't improving. Aggressive.
Treatments might buy time, but the specialists were no longer discussing recovery. A particularly violent thunderclap shook the building, and seconds later, the penthouse plunged into darkness. "Backup generators should engage momentarily," Ethan muttered, reaching for his phone to illuminate the suddenly dark office. When the emergency lights failed to activate, he frowned. Even his redundancy systems had failed, unprecedented in this building. A small sound from the hallway caught his attention. Moving carefully through the darkness, Ethan followed the noise to the twins' room. The door stood ajar, and his phone's light revealed an empty bed. "Ryan? Tyler?" he called, momentary panic rising in his chest. A whimper from the corner answered him. His light found them huddled in the narrow space between the bed and wall, blanket pulled over their heads, trembling with each thunderclap. "The power system has temporarily failed," Ethan explained, approaching cautiously. "There's no need for concern." "We don't like storms." Ryan's voice was barely audible beneath the blanket. Tyler added, "The thunder sounds like everything's breaking." Ethan stood awkwardly, uncertain how to proceed. Children's fears weren't covered in his expertise. He'd built technological empires, navigated trillion-dollar markets, but comforting frightened children was entirely outside his competency. Another flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed by a deafening crash that made even Ethan flinch. Both boys gave little cries of terror. Something primitive and protective stirred within him. Slowly, he sat down on the floor beside them. "When I was young," he heard himself saying, "perhaps your age, I was also afraid of thunderstorms." Seer, blanket shifted slightly, revealing 2 pairs of identical blue eyes, his eyes peering out skeptically. "You were scared of storms?" Tyler asked doubtfully. "Indeed," Ethan replied, surprising himself with this admission. "I lived in a house with a tin roof. The sound was overwhelming." "How did you stop being scared?" Ryan's question hung in the darkness. Ethan considered a moment. "My grandfather taught me to count the seconds between lightning and thunder. Each second represents approximately 1/5 of a mile in distance." As if on cue, lightning flashed. Ethan began counting steadily. 1, 2, 3. Thunder followed on 4, and he nodded. "The storm is less than a mile away, but moving past us." The next flash came, and to his surprise, 2 small voices joined his count. When the thunder growled at 6, Tyler whispered, "It's getting farther away." "Precisely," Ethan confirmed. "We're simply calculating the storm's trajectory." For the next 20 minutes, they counted together after each lightning flash, tracking the storm's steady retreat. Gradually, the boys emerged from under the blanket, their scientific curiosity overcoming fear. 17 seconds, Ryan announced after the final distant rumble. "That's more than 3 miles away." "Correct." Ethan nodded, oddly pleased by the calculation. When the emergency lights finally flickered on, Ethan found himself sitting cross-legged on the floor with an 8-year-old on either side, all 3 still counting in unison. Something had shifted. A small bridge formed over the vast gap between their worlds. The next morning, Ethan observed the twins during their homeschool lessons. He noticed Tyler's remarkable ability to solve complex mathematical equations while Ryan demonstrated exceptional spatial reasoning through intricate drawings. For the first time, he saw them not as a shared problem, but as distinct individuals with unique talents. Talents that, perhaps not coincidentally, mirrored aspects of himself. That night, for the first time since their arrival, the twins unpacked a few items from their backpacks before bed. "Mr. Blackwood, I've cleared your afternoon schedule as requested," Marian announced, barely concealing her surprise. In 15 years as Ethan's executive assistant, she'd never seen him voluntarily reschedule the quarterly projections meeting. "Thank you, Marian. I have an appointment at Westridge Academy at 3. Ethan straightened his tie, feeling oddly nervous. "It's a parent-teacher conference." Marian's professionally neutral expression slipped briefly. "Of course, sir. The car will be ready." She hesitated, then added, "The blue tie might be more appropriate. It's less intimidating." 30 minutes later, Ethan stood in Westridge Academy's oak-paneled admissions office, feeling wildly out of place among colorful educational posters and child-sized furniture. The twins sat quietly in the waiting area, wearing new school uniforms that Ethan's personal shopper had procured overnight. "Mr. Blackwood, we're delighted you could join us." Headmistress Winters greeted him, "Though I must admit your application was unusual. Mid-semester transfers typically require more extensive preparation." "The circumstances are exceptional," Ethan replied, his tone making it clear that details would not be forthcoming. The headmistress nodded tactfully. "We've reviewed the boys' preliminary assessments. Their academic fundamentals are remarkably strong, though there are some gaps in their formal education. Their mother homeschooled them recently," Ethan explained, careful to preserve Jessica's dignity. "She was quite thorough with mathematics and reading. Indeed, Tyler's aptitude for numerical reasoning is exceptional, possibly gifted level, and Ryan's spatial visual abilities are equally impressive. His drawings show remarkable perspective for a child his age." Pride, an unfamiliar sensation in this context, flickered through Ethan. "They're intelligent boys. They'll need some social adjustment after homeschooling," the headmistress continued, "and emotional support given their mother's condition, which you mentioned briefly in your application." Something protective tightened in Ethan's chest. "Their mother receives excellent care. The boys' emotional needs are also being addressed." This wasn't entirely true. Ethan had no strategy for addressing their emotional needs, but he was suddenly unwilling to admit any inadequacy in his guardianship. Later that evening, Ethan stood in the doorway of his former meditation room, now transformed into a workspace for the twins. The minimalist Zen decor had been replaced with 2 desks, art supplies for Ryan, and engineering kits for Tyler. Mrs. Chen had added child-appropriate touches, colorful lamps, comfortable chairs, and a bookshelf filled with titles Marian had researched as essential children's literature. "This is for us?" Ryan asked, eyes wide at the array of quality art materials. "You mentioned enjoying drawing," Ethan replied awkwardly. "The supplies should be adequate." Tyler approached the engineering desk cautiously. "Is this a real microscope?" "Digital. 300 times magnification," Ethan confirmed. "There's also a robotics kit. I thought it might interest you." The boys exchanged their silent look, that twin communication Ethan could never decipher. "Thank you," they said in unison, still clearly overwhelmed. That night, after their homework was complete, Ethan surprised himself by joining them for dinner rather than eating at his desk. Mrs. Chen had prepared a proper family meal, the concept still foreign to him, and he found himself listening to the twins' descriptions of their first day at Westridge. "Ms. Abernathy said my math is 9th grade level," Tyler reported proudly. "But my handwriting needs work. My art teacher wants me to join the spring exhibition," Ryan added, a hint of excitement breaking through his usual reserve. "She said, my perspective technique is advanced." Ethan nodded, uncertain how to respond to these achievements. In business, he would offer precise feedback and improvement strategies. With children, the protocols seemed different. "That's excellent work," he managed, watching their expressions carefully. Their small smiles in response suggested his answer, though awkward, had been acceptable. Later, as Ethan reviewed hospital invoices for Jessica's treatment, he realized the twins had begun referring to the penthouse as home, rather than the glass castle, their initial wide-eyed description. A small shift, but significant. In his calendar, the quarterly projections meeting now appeared less critical than the reminder. 9th birthday, cake, presents, Marion to research appropriate options. Mr. Blackwood, I've cleared your afternoon. Schedule as requested, Marion announced, barely concealing her surprise. In 15 years as Ethan's executive assistant, she'd never seen him voluntarily reschedule the quarterly projections meeting. Thank you, Marion. I have an appointment at Westridge Academy at 3. Ethan straightened his tie, feeling oddly nervous. It's a parent-teacher conference. Marion's professionally neutral expression slipped briefly. Of course, sir. The car will be ready. She hesitated, then added, the blue tie might be more appropriate. It's less intimidating. 30 minutes later, Ethan stood in Westridge Academy's oak-paneled admissions office, feeling wildly out of place among colorful educational posters and child-sized furniture. The twins sat quietly in the waiting area, wearing new school uniforms that Ethan's personal shopper had procured overnight. Mr. Blackwood, we're delighted you could join us, Headmistress Winters greeted him. Though I must admit, your application was unusual. Mid-semester transfers typically require more extensive preparation. The circumstances are exceptional, Ethan replied, his tone making it clear that details would not be forthcoming. The headmistress nodded tactfully. We've reviewed the boys' preliminary assessments. Their academic fundamentals are remarkably strong, though there are some gaps in their formal education. Their mother homeschooled them recently, Ethan explained, careful to preserve Jessica's dignity. She was quite thorough with mathematics and reading. Indeed, Tyler's aptitude for numerical reasoning is exceptional, possibly gifted level, and Ryan's spatial visual abilities are equally impressive. His drawings show remarkable perspective for a child his age. Pride, an unfamiliar sensation in this context, flickered through Ethan. They're intelligent boys. They'll need some social adjustment after homeschooling, the headmistress continued, and emotional support given their mother's condition, which you mentioned briefly in your application. Something protective tightened in Ethan's chest. Their mother receives excellent care. The boys' emotional needs are also being addressed. This wasn't entirely true. Ethan had no strategy for addressing their emotional needs, but he was suddenly unwilling to admit any inadequacy in his guardianship. Later that evening, Ethan stood in the doorway of his former meditation room, now transformed into a workspace for the twins. The minimalist Zen decor had been replaced with 2 desks, art supplies for Ryan, and engineering kits for Tyler. Mrs. Chen had added child-appropriate touches, colorful lamps, comfortable chairs, and a bookshelf filled with titles Marion had researched as essential children's literature. This is for us? Ryan asked, eyes wide at the array of quality art materials. You mentioned enjoying drawing, Ethan replied awkwardly. The supplies should be adequate. Tyler approached the engineering desk cautiously. Is this a real microscope? Digital. 300 times magnification, Ethan confirmed. There's also a robotics kit. I thought it might interest you. The boys exchanged their silent look, that twin communication Ethan could never decipher. Thank you, they said in unison, still clearly overwhelmed. That night, after their homework was complete, Ethan surprised himself by joining them for dinner rather than eating at his desk. Mrs. Chen had prepared a proper family meal, the concept still foreign to him, and he found himself listening to the twins' descriptions of their first day at Westridge. Ms. Abernathy said my math is 9th grade level, Tyler reported proudly. But my handwriting needs work. My art teacher wants me to join the spring exhibition, Ryan added, a hint of excitement breaking through his usual reserve. She said, "My perspective technique is advanced." Ethan nodded, uncertain how to respond to these achievements. In business, he would offer precise feedback and improvement strategies. With children, the protocols seemed different. "That's excellent work," he managed, watching their expressions carefully. Their small smiles in response suggested his answer, though awkward, had been acceptable. Later, as Ethan reviewed hospital invoices for Jessica's treatment, he realized the twins had begun referring to the penthouse as home rather than the glass castle, their initial wide-eyed description. A small shift, but significant. In his calendar, the quarterly projections meeting now appeared less critical than the reminder. 9th birthday, cake, presents, Marion to research appropriate options. "The Singapore acquisition cannot proceed without your direct involvement, Ethan." Charles Westfield, CFO and Ethan's longest-standing board member, leaned forward across the conference table. "You've missed 3 critical meetings this month." Ethan maintained his composure, though internally he calculated how quickly he could end this meeting and still make Tyler's mathematics competition at Westridge Academy by 4 o'clock. "The preliminary framework is sufficient. Harrison can manage the details," Ethan replied, referring to his recently appointed Director of Operations, a position created specifically to handle responsibilities Ethan previously would never have delegated. Murmurs circulated among the board members. Judith Parsons, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, spoke next. "There are concerns, Ethan. You've been distracted, unavailable, the market has noticed." "Black Tech's stock is up 17% this quarter," Ethan countered smoothly. "Despite your recent absence, not because of it," Charles retorted. "And there are rumors." Ethan's phone vibrated. Marion's message read, "Tyler's competition starts in 45 minutes. Driver ready." "My schedule requires I conclude this meeting," Ethan stated, standing abruptly. "Harrison has complete authority to finalize the Singapore parameters within the established guidelines." As he gathered his documents, Judith cleared her throat. "Ethan, there's talk about children living in your residence. If your personal situation is affecting company operations..." "My personal life remains private." Ethan cut her off with a coldness that had once been his standard operating mode. "The company's performance speaks for itself." The tension followed him into the elevator, where he quickly exchanged his formal jacket for a more casual blazer that Marion had thoughtfully left with the driver. Appearance at a children's school event apparently required different protocols than board meetings. He arrived at Westridge Academy with 7 minutes to spare, slipping into the auditorium, where parents clutched programs and smartphones with equal fervor. Ethan felt conspicuously out of place, a sensation he'd experienced more frequently since the twins' arrival 9 weeks ago. Tyler spotted him from the competitors section, his small face lighting up with surprise and relief. Ethan nodded in acknowledgement, something warm and unfamiliar spreading in his chest at the boy's reaction to his presence. The competition proceeded with surprising intensity for an elementary school event. Tyler advanced through each round, his mathematical prowess evident even to the other parents, who whispered among themselves while glancing in Ethan's direction. "That's Ethan Blackwood's son," he overheard. "I didn't know he had children." "Apparently very recent. My husband works at Black Tech, says Blackwood's been restructuring his entire schedule around these mystery kids." "Adopted? They look just like him, though." Ethan ignored the speculation, focusing instead on Tyler's confident handling of complex equations. When the final scores were tallied and Tyler placed second, Ethan felt an irrational surge of pride that had nothing to do with winning. As they walked toward the car, Tyler clutching his silver medal, the boy asked hesitantly, "Are you disappointed I didn't get first place?" The question stopped Ethan mid-stride. "Why would you think that?" Tyler shrugged, studying his shoes. "You're always the best at everything. Your company is always first." Ethan considered his response carefully. "In business, second place rarely has value," he admitted. "But this, your achievement, is extraordinary. You competed against students 2 grades above you." Tyler's smile was tentative but genuine. When they returned to the penthouse, Ryan was waiting with Mrs. Chen. His disappointment was palpable. "Did you see my art exhibition? It started at 3. The realization hit Ethan like a physical blow. 2 events, 2 boys, 2 places he couldn't be simultaneously. The simplest of parental dilemmas, yet he'd failed to anticipate it. For once, Ethan Blackwood found himself without a strategic response. That evening, his phone rang with a name he hadn't seen in years. Victoria. His ex-wife's timing had always been impeccable and problematic. "Ethan, darling," her voice purred through the speaker. "I hear you've been keeping secrets. Twin boys, how absolutely fascinating." Victoria's sudden reappearance in his life triggered old defense mechanisms. Ethan retreated to familiar territory. Work. The Singapore acquisition demanded attention. The board required reassurance. Market analysts needed statements. All reasonable excuses to insulate himself from the emotional complexities that had invaded his carefully structured life. For 3 days, Ethan barricaded himself in his home office, emerging only for brief, formal interactions with the twins. Mrs. Chen managed their daily routine while Marion coordinated their school schedules. It was efficient, logical, emotionally safe. On the 4th evening, Ethan's phone lit up with the hospital's number. "Mr. Blackwood, Jessica Parker is asking for you," the nurse informed him. "Her condition has deteriorated significantly. The oncologist recommends you come as soon as possible." The hospital corridor felt endless as Ethan approached Jessica's room. The twins had visited her that afternoon with Mrs. Chen, a routine he'd established, then gradually stopped participating in personally. Jessica lay propped against pillows, her once vibrant presence diminished to fragile translucence. Yet her eyes, so similar to her son's, remained sharp and perceptive. "You're avoiding them," she stated without preamble, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, unused to such direct emotional confrontation. "I've had pressing business matters. They think they've done something wrong." Jessica's words cut through his defenses. After Ryan's art exhibition, Tyler told him it was his fault you missed it, that if he hadn't asked you to his math competition, you might have gone to Ryan's instead. Shame, an emotion Ethan rarely experienced, washed over him. "I wasn't aware of the scheduling conflict until it was too late. That's not why I asked you here." Jessica's breathing was labored between sentences. "The treatment isn't working as we'd hoped. I need to know what happens to my boys when I'm gone." The stark reality of her deterioration struck Ethan anew. Despite the best medical care money could buy, Jessica was dying, and the twins, possibly his biological sons, would be orphaned. "The DNA results," he began. "Don't insult both of us," Jessica interrupted with surprising strength. "Look at them, Ethan, they're yours, but biology isn't what matters now. What matters is whether you're willing to be their father, not just their financial provider." Her words exposed the truth he'd been avoiding. He'd been handling the twins like a business problem rather than a relationship, providing resources, but withholding himself. Back at the penthouse later that night, unable to sleep, Ethan found himself drawn to the twins' room. The door stood slightly ajar and he peered in, expecting to find them asleep. Instead, he discovered an empty bed. Alarm surged through him until he noticed light spilling from their closet. Approaching quietly, he heard whispers. "We should pack. Warm clothes, it gets cold at night. Do you think we can find our old apartment building? Maybe Mrs. Gonzalez in 2A would let us stay until they find us a foster home." Ethan's heart constricted as he realized what was happening. They were planning to run away, back to the security of familiar poverty rather than endure his emotional absence in the midst of luxury. "The electronic locks require a passcode to exit after midnight," he said quietly, pushing the closet door fully open. The twins froze, small backpacks half filled with their few possessions. Their expressions, guilty, defiant, and heartbreakingly vulnerable, mirrored each other perfectly. "You weren't supposed to know until morning," Tyler finally said. "We don't want to bother you anymore," Ryan added, his voice small. "You're very busy." In that moment, Ethan recognized his own childhood reflected in their resigned faces, the calculations of an unwanted child, measuring his worth against adults' willingness to make space in their lives. He'd been recreating the emotional patterns of his own distant upbringing despite his promises to himself that he would never become his father. "I've made a mistake," Ethan said, the admission unfamiliar on his tongue. "Several mistakes, actually." The twins exchanged their silent glance, then looked back at him warily. "I'd like to try again," Ethan continued, choosing his words with uncharacteristic care. "If you're willing." The conference room fell silent as Ethan completed his announcement. 20 executive faces stared back at him in varying states of shock. "To summarize," he continued calmly, "Harrison Edwards will assume the role of Chief Operating Officer with expanded authority over daily operations. I will remain as CEO with strategic oversight, but my in-office presence will be reduced to accommodate my new family obligations." Charles Westfield recovered first. "Ethan, while we appreciate your personal situation, this restructuring is unprecedented." "So are the circumstances," Ethan replied. "The arrangements are non-negotiable." Later that morning, Ethan sat across from the twins at their favorite breakfast spot near Central Park, a small diner where the waitress knew their names and always brought extra whipped cream for their hot chocolate. "I have something important to discuss." Ethan began, feeling strangely nervous. The twins looked up expectantly, their identical blue eyes, his eyes, watching with the wariness that still sometimes appeared despite his recent efforts. "I've rearranged my work schedule," he explained. "Starting today, I'll take you to school each morning and I'll be home by 4:30 every afternoon." The twins exchanged their silent communication glance. "What about your important meetings?" Tyler asked cautiously. "They've been rescheduled or delegated," Ethan replied. "Your school activities and homework time take priority now." Ryan studied him skeptically. "For how long?" The question revealed the depth of their uncertainty, their expectation that his attention was temporary, conditional. "Permanently," Ethan stated firmly. "I've made a commitment to you both, to our family." The word felt foreign on his tongue. He'd never used it in reference to himself before, but the twins' expression suggested it was the right one. That evening, after visiting Jessica at the hospital, Ethan helped the boys create memory books. Beautiful, leather-bound journals Marion had found that could hold photographs, drawings, and written memories of their life with their mother. "Mom used to read us 3 books every night, even when she was really tired," Ryan shared, carefully pasting a photo of Jessica in his journal. "She made up special voices for all the characters," Tyler added, "even the scary ones." Ethan listened, asking questions, learning about the woman who had raised his sons with such care despite her limited resources. He'd been so caught up in the biological confirmation, the DNA tests that had indeed verified his paternity, that he'd nearly missed the more important truth. Jessica had given these boys a foundation of love that all his wealth couldn't have provided. Over the following weeks, Ethan created structure without rigidity. Breakfast together became sacred time. School drop-offs included a specific goodbye ritual they'd developed together. Afternoons balanced homework with activities that nurtured their individual interests. The penthouse gradually transformed from a minimalist showplace to a functioning home. On a Saturday morning, 6 months after the twins' arrival, Ethan noticed something significant. Their backpacks, once perpetually packed for quick departure, had been completely emptied. Their clothes hung properly in closets. Books and toys occupied shelves. Small personal items, rocks Ryan found interesting, origami creatures Tyler created from mathematical papers, dotted formerly pristine surfaces. They had moved in, truly and completely. That afternoon, as Ethan helped Tyler with an advanced robotics program while Ryan sketched contentedly nearby. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "We need to talk about these children you've acquired. My attorney will be in touch. Some concerns have arisen regarding legitimacy and inheritance. Dinner soon to discuss? V." Ethan silenced the phone, turning his attention back to the robot Tyler was programming. The external threat could wait. This moment, this hard-won peace with his sons, took precedence over everything else. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan Blackwood had rearranged his priorities around people rather than profit, and found himself strangely content with the trade. "Dad, watch this," Tyler called out, his robot navigating the obstacle course they'd constructed across the living room floor. The small machine beeped triumphantly as it reached the finish line without a single collision. Ethan looked up from his tablet, momentarily startled by the casual use of "Dad," a recent development that still caught him off guard but warmed something deep in his chest. "Impressive programming," he acknowledged. "Your algorithm accounts for variable speeds on different surfaces." Tyler beamed at the technical observation. At 9 years old, he thrived on specific feedback rather than generic praise, a trait Ethan recognized in himself. From the art corner they'd established near the windows, Ryan called, "I finished the skyline drawing, want to see?" The brothers had developed distinct personalities in the 6 months since arriving at the penthouse. Tyler was methodical, precise, drawn to mathematics and engineering challenges that reflected Ethan's own analytical mind. Ryan possessed an emotional intelligence that sometimes unsettled Ethan with its accuracy, along with artistic talents that transformed how he saw the world. Later that afternoon, they visited Jessica at the hospital. Her condition had stabilized temporarily, allowing for longer, more meaningful visits. The sterile room had been transformed with the boys' artwork, photographs, and small treasures, creating a space that felt almost like home. "They beat me at chess yesterday," Ethan told Jessica as the twins explored the hospital's newly installed game room down the hall. "Both of them consecutively." Jessica smiled weakly. "They've always been strategic thinkers. You should see them negotiate bedtime." An easy rapport had developed between them, co-parents in an impossible situation unified by their shared concern for the boys' well-being. "Tyler called me Dad this morning," Ethan said quietly. Jessica's eyes softened. "How did that feel?" "Terrifying," Ethan admitted. "And right somehow." "They trust you now," Jessica observed. "That's a precious gift. Don't squander it." The following Wednesday, Ethan received an urgent call from Headmistress Winters at Westridge Academy. He arrived to find Tyler sitting outside, the administrative office, arms crossed defensively, a darkening bruise beneath his right eye. "There was an altercation during recess," the headmistress explained. "Apparently, Jacob Miller suggested that Tyler and Ryan were," she lowered her voice, "charity cases taken in for publicity purposes." Cold anger surged through Ethan. "And the other child's punishment?" "Jacob is being disciplined appropriately," she assured him. But Tyler's reaction was concerningly physical. In the car, Tyler maintained rigid silence, staring out the window. "Physical confrontation is rarely the optimal strategy," Ethan finally said, falling back on logical analysis where emotional comfort failed him. "He said you were going to send us away once you got bored," Tyler burst out. "That you only took us in because it made you look good in the newspapers." Ethan pulled the car over, turning to face his son fully. "Tyler, look at me." The boy reluctantly met his gaze, blue eyes, so like Ethan's own, swimming with unshed tears. "You and Ryan are not a publicity stunt or a charitable project," Ethan stated firmly. "You are my sons. Genetically, legally, and—" He hesitated, emotional language still unfamiliar territory, "in every way that matters." "But what if you change your mind?" Tyler's voice cracked. "People do that." The question revealed the core fear that still haunted both boys despite months of stability, the fear that their place in Ethan's life remained conditional, Temporary. I have established a legally binding guardianship, Ethan explained, falling back on concrete facts. More importantly, I have restructured my entire life around you and Ryan. I have not, and will not, change my mind. Tyler's posture relaxed, slightly. Ryan says you're different now than when we first came. He says you smile more. This observation, so simple yet profound, caught Ethan off guard. The transformation had been so gradual he'd barely noticed it himself. That evening, after both boys were asleep, Ethan received another text from Victoria. My attorney Daniel Harrington will contact you tomorrow. These children deserve proper vetting before any inheritance implications are established. For your own protection, of course. The implied threat was clear, but for the first time in their long history, Victoria's manipulation seemed trivial compared to the trust reflected in Tyler's words. Dad, watch this. Chapter 11. The threat emerges. Ethan, darling, you look positively domestic, Victoria drawled, her Louboutins clicking precisely against the marble as she strode uninvited into his penthouse. Behind her followed a silver-haired man carrying a leather portfolio, his expression professionally neutral. Victoria. This is unexpected, Ethan replied coolly, glancing at his watch. The twins would be home from their robotics club in 30 minutes, a deliberately scheduled intersection he wanted to avoid. This is Daniel Harrington, Victoria continued as if he hadn't spoken, one of New York's premier inheritance attorneys. He's concerned about your recent acquisitions. Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand. Mr. Blackwood, I specialize in protecting family assets from fraudulent claims. Ethan ignored the offered handshake. My sons are not acquisitions, and there is nothing fraudulent about their situation. Victoria settled herself on the sofa, once her favorite during their marriage, and examined the transformed living space with theatrical dismay. Children's books on Carrara marble. How times change. What do you want, Victoria? Ethan asked directly, remaining standing. Only to protect you, she replied with practiced concern. These children appeared quite suddenly, with a convenient story about fertility clinic donations. Have you considered the possibility that this dying woman targeted you specifically? Your net worth would make you an attractive mark. The DNA tests confirmed paternity weeks ago, Ethan stated flatly. Daniel cleared his throat. With respect, Mr. Blackwood, DNA tests can be manipulated. We would recommend independent verification through our specialists. Completely confidential, of course, Victoria added smoothly. We wouldn't want the press speculating about your sudden foray into fatherhood. Something in her tone triggered Ethan's instincts. You've been investigating Jessica. Victoria's slight smile confirmed his suspicion. Simply preliminary due diligence. Her employment history at the library checks out, though her financial situation was more complex than one might expect. Several large withdrawals before her diagnosis. Interesting timing. The insinuation hung in the air, calculated to plant seeds of doubt. Before Ethan could respond, the elevator chimed, announcing an arrival. Mrs. Chen appeared, her normally impassive face showing unusual concern. Mr. Blackwood, the hospital called. Ms. Parker has taken a turn. The boys are already on their way there with Marion. Ethan moved immediately toward the door, all thoughts of Victoria forgotten. We'll continue this discussion later, Daniel called after him. This situation has significant implications for your estate planning. At the hospital, Ethan found the twins in the family waiting area, their faces pale with fear. Marion sat between them, her usual professional demeanor softened by genuine concern. The doctors are with her now, Marion explained quietly. Her oxygen levels dropped suddenly. Ryan looked up at Ethan, his artistic sensitivity making him particularly vulnerable to emotional currents. Is Mom going to die today? The direct question struck Ethan like a physical blow. His old self would have retreated into clinical facts or vague reassurances. Instead, he knelt before his sons. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "The doctors are doing everything possible." Tyler's expression hardened with the stoicism that was his emotional armor. "We should be with her." "Yes," Ethan agreed, "as soon as the doctors say it's all right." 3 hours later, Jessica had been stabilized, but the crisis had accelerated. Her decline. As the twins finally fell asleep in chairs beside her bed, Ethan stepped into the hallway to speak with her oncologist. "Weeks, not months," the doctor confirmed quietly. "Her systems are failing progressively." Ethan nodded, processing the timeline. As he turned back toward Jessica's room, his phone buzzed with a message from Marion. Victoria accessed the fertility clinic records. Harrington filing preliminary motion regarding guardianship evaluation, citing concerns about hasty arrangements and your work schedule. Meeting with our legal team tomorrow, 8 a.m. The threat was no longer theoretical. Victoria, whether motivated by jealousy, financial calculation, or simple malice, was creating a legal challenge that would add immeasurable stress to an already impossible situation. Inside the hospital room, Jessica's eyes opened as he entered. Despite her weakness, her perception remained sharp. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Ethan hesitated, unwilling to burden her with Victoria's manipulations. But Jessica deserved the truth about her son's future. "There may be some legal complications regarding the guardianship," he admitted, keeping his voice low to avoid waking the twins. Jessica's frail hand reached for his. "Fight for them, Ethan. Not just with your money, with everything you are." The hospice facility overlooked Central Park, its tasteful interior designed to mask its ultimate purpose. Jessica's room featured large windows where autumn leaves painted the view in golds and crimsons, her favorite colors, as the twins had informed the staff. Ethan sat beside her bed reviewing legal documents while Jessica dozed. The twins were at school. Maintaining routine had become essential as their mother's condition deteriorated. "You should be at the courthouse," Jessica murmured, her eyes still closed. "My lawyers are handling the preliminary hearing," Ethan replied. Setting aside the papers, Jessica's eyes opened, their blue, so like her son's, now shadowed with pain medication. "Victoria sounds determined." "She is." Ethan didn't sugarcoat the situation. Their relationship had evolved beyond platitudes. "She's claiming my work history makes me an unsuitable guardian, that the boys would be better served in a stable, traditional environment while maintaining financial support from me. She wants control of their inheritance," Jessica translated. Yes. The simplicity of Victoria's motivation made it no less dangerous. "She's demanding expanded DNA verification and a full investigation of our arrangement." Jessica's laugh was a ghost of its former self. "As if I orchestrated this elaborate scheme while dying of cancer." Her gallows humor had become a bond between them, a shared defiance against the cruelties of circumstance. The door opened as Marion arrived with coffee and updates. "Mr. Blackwood, the school called. There was an incident with Tyler." Ethan tensed. "Is he hurt?" "No, but he struck another student who was apparently discussing the newspaper article. The New York Times piece had appeared that morning. Tech billionaire in custody battle over secret twin heirs. Victoria's legal challenge had leaked to the press, complete with insinuations about Jessica's motives and Ethan's fitness as a parent. "I'll handle it," Ethan said, already reaching for his coat. Jessica caught his wrist. "Bring them here afterward. They need to see me, while I'm still myself." At Westridge Academy, Ethan found Tyler in the headmistress's office, sullen and defiant. "He said Mom tricked you for your money," Tyler stated flatly when they were alone. "That will be sent away when she dies." The raw fear beneath the anger tore at Ethan's heart. "Tyler, look at me," he said firmly. "That will never happen." The newspaper said there's a court case. A legal formality, Ethan explained, choosing his words carefully. Nothing that will change our family. Tyler studied him, searching for deception. Ryan's not eating lunch anymore. He thinks we should save food in case we have to run away. The revelation struck Ethan like a physical blow. Despite all his efforts, their security remained fragile. Fear of abandonment lurking just beneath the surface. That evening, after visiting Jessica, Ethan found Ryan in his room scrutinizing the New York Times article that one of the hospice nurses had carelessly left visible. "It says your ex-wife thinks you're not good at being a dad," Ryan said without preamble. Ethan sat beside him on the bed. "Victoria doesn't know me anymore. Or you. Will a judge take us away from you?" "No," Ethan stated with a certainty he wasn't entirely sure he could guarantee. "Our family stays together. But what if—" "Ryan," Ethan interrupted gently, "do you remember when you first came here? How your backpacks stayed packed by the door for weeks?" Ryan nodded. "You were afraid to believe this was permanent," Ethan continued. "But now your drawings are on the refrigerator, your books fill the shelves, and this morning you argued with Tyler over whose turn it was to feed the fish in our aquarium." "This is our home," Ryan acknowledged quietly. "Yes. And nothing, no legal challenge, no newspaper article, changes that fact." Later that night, Ethan found the twins huddled together in Tyler's bed, whispering intensely. They froze when they spotted him in the doorway. "We're not running away," Tyler said quickly. "We were just making a plan, just in case." The persistent fear behind those words crystallized something in Ethan. Tomorrow he would face Victoria and her lawyer in court, but tonight, he needed to give his sons something stronger than legal reassurances. "Move over," he said, surprising them all by sitting on the edge of the bed. "Let me tell you about the first day you arrived on my doorstep, and how you changed everything." Jessica Parker died peacefully on a Thursday morning, her sons and Ethan at her bedside. She'd used her final moments of lucidity to give each boy a private message, then squeezed Ethan's hand and whispered, "They're worth everything." The funeral was small but beautiful, arranged by Ethan with input from the twins. Ryan had insisted on yellow roses, his mother's favorite, while Tyler had selected music from her cherished vinyl collection. At 10 years old, they conducted themselves with a dignity that moved even the hospice staff to tears. As the service concluded, Victoria approached, her black designer dress immaculate, her expression a practiced mask of sympathy. Daniel Harrington flanked her, carrying a manila envelope. "Not now," Ethan warned quietly. "The court doesn't pause for sentiment, darling," Victoria murmured, extending the envelope. "We have a hearing scheduled for Monday." Ryan's artist's eye caught the exchange. "Who's that lady?" he whispered to Ethan. "No one important," Ethan replied, turning away from Victoria to focus on his sons. Monday arrived with grim inevitability. Ethan had prepared the twins as best he could, explaining that they would stay with Marion during the hearing, emphasizing that this legal procedure was merely a formality, just grown-ups talking to a judge about paperwork. He'd simplified, not wanting to burden them with the full stakes of the proceeding. Judge Eleanor Michaels studied the documents before her with methodical thoroughness, while Victoria's attorney presented their case. "Mr. Blackwood's lifestyle is fundamentally incompatible with parenthood," Harrington argued smoothly. "His company requires extensive travel. His work schedule historically extends well into the evening hours. The hasty nature of this guardianship arrangement raises serious concerns about proper vetting and the children's emotional stability." Ethan's attorney countered with evidence of the comprehensive changes implemented over the past 9 months. The COO appointment, the restructured schedule, the boys' academic progress and psychological evaluations showing healthy adjustment, despite their mother's illness. "Furthermore," she continued, We have documentation of Ms. Taylor's inquiries into the children's potential inheritance and trust arrangements before initiating these proceedings. Victoria's expression remained impassive, though her manicured nails dug visibly into her palm. Judge Michaels removed her reading glasses. "I'd like to speak with the children." Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd hoped to shield the twins from direct involvement. Ryan and Tyler entered the chambers minutes later, their matching navy suits, purchased for their mother's funeral, lending them a solemn appearance beyond their years. They sat side by side, shoulders touching for mutual support. "I understand this has been a very difficult time for you," the judge began gently. "I'm sorry about your mother." The twins nodded in unison, but remained silent. "I need to ask you some questions about living with Mr. Blackwood," she continued. "There's no right or wrong answer, I just want to know how you feel." Tyler, ever the protector, spoke first. "He's our dad. The DNA test proved it, but that's not why he's our dad." "Could you explain what you mean?" the judge prompted. Tyler glanced at Ethan before continuing. "When I was afraid to go back to school after some kids teased me, he didn't just tell me to be brave. He came to my classroom and talked to everyone about how sometimes smart people get bullied by people who don't understand them. Then he showed everyone cool technology and explained how math builds everything important." Ryan added softly, "When I couldn't sleep after Mom went to the hospice, he sat with me every night and helped me draw pictures of happy memories with her. He never told me to stop crying." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "And before you came to live with Mr. Blackwood, did you know him?" "No," Ryan answered, "but Mom kept his picture. She said our eyes came from him." "He's teaching us chess," Tyler volunteered. "And he comes to all our school things now, even when he has important meetings." "Even when both of us have different events on the same day," Ryan emphasized. "He figured out how to be at both." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest at this simple acknowledgement of his most important parental lesson, being present. Victoria shifted impatiently. "Your Honor, children this age can be easily influenced." "Ms. Taylor," Judge Michaels interrupted sharply, "you'll have your opportunity to speak." She turned back to the twins. "One last question. If you could choose where to live, where would that be?" The twins answered in perfect unison, "With our dad." As they left the chambers, Ryan paused by Victoria's chair. With the startling perception that made his artwork so compelling, he studied her face. "You're sad," he observed quietly, "but not about us." Victoria's practiced composure slipped for just a moment, revealing something wounded beneath her polished exterior. Chapter 14. Resolution. The court hereby grants permanent guardianship to Ethan Blackwood, with a direct path to formal adoption pending standard follow-up evaluations. Judge Michaels's voice rang clear in the courtroom as she signed the final order. Additionally, the court recognizes the genetic verification confirming Mr. Blackwood's biological paternity of Ryan and Tyler Parker. Ethan maintained his composure, though relief coursed through him like a physical current. 9 months of uncertainty solidified into legal reality with the stroke of a pen. Victoria sat rigidly beside her attorney, her expression unreadable. The judge continued, her tone noticeably cooler. "Regarding Ms. Taylor's petition, this court finds concerning evidence of ulterior financial motives. The documentation submitted showing Ms. Taylor's inquiries into the children's potential inheritance status prior to raising guardianship concerns suggests improper intent." Daniel Harrington shifted uncomfortably as Judge Michaels added, "The Bar Association will receive a copy of these proceedings for review of potentially unethical legal strategy." Outside the courthouse, Marion waited with the twins, who immediately rushed to Ethan when they spotted him. Their anxious expressions transformed to joy when he nodded, confirming the outcome without words. "It's official," he told them, allowing himself a rare public display of emotion as he drew them into an embrace. "We are legally a family." Ryan's arms tightened around his waist. Forever? Forever, Ethan confirmed. That evening, as the three celebrated with a dinner of the twins' choosing, pizza with everything on it, a culinary adventure Ethan would have found inconceivable a year ago, his phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. Congratulations. You've won as usual. Perhaps they'll fare better with you than I did. The cryptic message hinted at depths to Victoria's motivations beyond simple financial calculation, wounds from their failed marriage that had never properly healed. For the first time, Ethan felt something approaching compassion for his ex-wife, though it didn't excuse her actions. 2 weeks later, Ethan convened his executive team for an announcement. Harrison Edwards, now comfortably established as COO, nodded, with approval as Ethan outlined his plans. The Jessica Parker Foundation will launch next quarter, Ethan explained. Its mission is to provide comprehensive support to single parents facing terminal illness, ensuring their children maintain stability, education, and appropriate care during and after medical crisis. Marion distributed detailed proposals as Ethan continued. Initial funding will be $50 million with annual contributions tied to Black Tech's performance. We'll partner with Mount Sinai's Oncology Department and New York City's Social Services to identify families in need. Charles Westfield, once his harshest critic regarding the twins, studied the proposal thoughtfully. This is, unexpectedly, comprehensive, Ethan, and the focus on maintaining educational continuity for affected children is particularly strong. That aspect was developed with significant input from Tyler and Ryan, Ethan acknowledged. Their experience informed much of the foundation's structure. Later that month, the foundation's inaugural fundraising gala transformed Black Tech's corporate headquarters. The twins, dressed in their first custom suits, Tyler had insisted on navy, Ryan had chosen charcoal gray, stood proudly alongside Ethan as he addressed the gathered philanthropists and business leaders. 1 year ago, my understanding of success was defined exclusively by market position and technological innovation, Ethan began. Today I measure success differently, through the resilience of 2 extraordinary young men who, despite losing their mother to cancer, continue to approach life with courage and compassion. The twins exchanged their silent glance. That twin, communication that Ethan had come to recognize if not fully understand. I'd like to introduce Ryan and Tyler Blackwood, Ethan continued, using their new legal surname officially for the first time. The inspiration behind everything we're building here tonight. Tyler stepped forward first, his natural confidence evident as he explained the foundation's educational support systems. Ryan followed, describing the art therapy programs designed to help children process grief, programs he'd helped develop based on his own experience. As the evening concluded, Judith Parsons, once Ethan's most skeptical board member, approached him. I didn't think you capable of this kind of humanity, she admitted. Your sons are remarkable young men. They are, Ethan agreed, watching as the twins charmed potential donors with their intelligence and earnestness. Though I can take little credit for that. Their mother raised them with extraordinary values despite difficult circumstances. But they have your analytical minds, Judith observed. And now, perhaps, your capacity to change the world, just in a different way than you originally imagined. That night, as Ethan tucked the exhausted boys into bed, a ritual he'd initially found awkward but now cherished, Ryan asked sleepily, "Do you think Mom saw us tonight?" The question would once have flummoxed the logical, literal-minded Ethan of a year ago. Now he simply said, "Yes, I believe she did." 3 years passed with the swift inevitability of childhood. What had once been strange, parent-teacher conferences, soccer games, science fair projects, had become the cherished rhythms of Ethan Blackwood's life. At 49, he'd restructured not just his schedule, but his entire conception of success. The penthouse, once a monument to minimalist isolation, had long since been sold. In its place stood a brownstone with a small backyard where prototype robots navigated obstacle courses, and artistic installations caught the changing light through the seasons. "Dad, the Newton Academy acceptance letters came." Tyler's voice echoed through the house as Ethan reviewed quarterly reports for the Jessica Parker Foundation, which now supported over 200 families nationwide. At 13, the twins remained identical physically, though their distinct personalities had blossomed. Tyler bounded into the study, waving 2 envelopes triumphantly, his energy every bit as kinetic as it had been at 8, though now contained in a ganglier frame that hinted at the man he would become. "Both of you?" Ethan asked, already knowing the answer. The prestigious Science Academy had been thoroughly impressed during the twins' interviews, particularly by Tyler's advanced robotics project that had won national recognition. "Ryan got into their specialized arts program," Tyler confirmed. "We'll be on the same campus but different tracks." Ryan appeared in the doorway, his expression more measured but equally pleased. "The director said my portfolio showed unusual emotional depth for someone my age," he reported with characteristic precision. At 13, he'd already developed a distinctive artistic voice. His work featured in student exhibitions that attracted genuine critical attention. "This calls for celebration," Ethan declared, setting aside his work without hesitation, a shift in priorities that still occasionally surprised his business associates, but had become second nature to him. Later that evening, as they finished dinner at the twins' favorite restaurant, Ethan presented them with small wrapped packages. "What's this for?" Ryan asked. "Our birthday isn't for 2 months." "These are heritage gifts," Ethan explained. "I thought 13 was an appropriate age." The twins unwrapped identical vintage pocket watches, their silver cases engraved with their initials. "These belong to my grandfather," Ethan continued. "The man who taught me to count between lightning and thunder." The brothers exchanged their silent glance, that twin communication that remained as mysterious to Ethan as it had on the first day they appeared at his door. "There's something else," Ethan added, sliding a document across the table. "The Jessica Parker Scholarship has been officially endowed at Columbia University's School of Arts. It will provide full funding annually to children raised by single parents." Ryan's eyes, so like his mother's, filled with tears. She would have loved that. She never got to finish her master's degree, Tyler remembered. She always wanted to go back to school someday. "The first recipient has already been selected," Ethan told them. "A young woman whose mother raised her alone while working 3 jobs. She'll study literature, as your mother would have." The conversation shifted to their upcoming school transition, projects for the summer, and a planned trip to Europe, their first international travel as a family. Throughout it all, Ethan observed his sons with quiet wonder. They carried Jessica's compassion and his analytical mind, yet had become entirely their own people, unfolding into unique individuals who constantly surprised him. After returning home, as the twins disappeared upstairs to call friends with their news, Ethan paused in the living room where a photograph held the place of honor. Taken at the Foundation's 2nd annual gala, it showed the 3 of them together, Ethan flanked by his sons, all 3 sharing the same distinctive blue eyes and, more tellingly, the same genuine smile. 5 years ago, he could not have imagined this life. His definition of success had been algorithmic, measurable in market share, technological innovation, and accumulated wealth. Nothing in that equation had accounted for the profound fulfillment of watching his sons navigate both triumph and disappointment, or the simple pleasure of family dinners filled with debate and laughter. Outside, a spring thunderstorm rolled across the city. Through the window, Ethan watched lightning illuminate the skyline and instinctively began counting seconds until the thunder followed. 1, 2, 3. 2 voices joined his from the staircase, counting in perfect unison. The thunder arrived on 4, and Tyler announced, "Getting closer, but not too close," Ryan added with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned that storms eventually pass. Ethan nodded, surrounded by the family he never expected, formed not through traditional paths but through choices, challenges, and ultimately, love. The most valuable legacy of his life would not be measured in patents or profit margins, but in the two remarkable young men who had appeared at his door on a stormy night and changed everything. No, he agreed, putting an arm around each of his sons. Not too close at all.